everybody in your house singing.
Oh,
All right. I'm so glad you guys are came. The previous section, nobody showed up, and I felt like I was in an echo chamber. So I'm really, I can't tell you how grateful I am when you guys show up. And it is kind of funny to me when the chair that I'm sitting in, it's a recliner, and the way that the camera works and everything, it makes me look like I'm quite a bit whiter than I normally am. If you met me at UVU, I do not look the same as I do when I'm on camera, just because of how comfy the chair is, I think. Anyway, I am really glad that you guys are here today. Let's see. Okay, we are recording. Excellent. Did you guys have a good week or weekend?
yeah. I got to see Project Hail Mary. That was pretty
I,
good.
I've heard some really good things about that. I particularly appreciate the author because they do the best they can to use science, actual science, which I think is fantastic. Growing up, my favorite authors were the likes of Asimov and Heinlein for that kind of thing because they really knew the math. And then, excuse me, of course, if I'm looking at science fiction as a backdrop, then Andre Norton was my favorite. But those guys were pretty amazing. Another author I really enjoyed was James Triptree Jr., and I found out that's actually the pen name for a woman, and she was so brilliant. She masterminded several of these kind of subversive top secret programs that the US government would do just to get the Soviets thinking, oh, we've got to start looking into that too and waste their money. And one of the projects she was assigned to was a really complicated one uh, that convinced the Soviets that we had, as a government, been engaging with aliens, and just nobody even knows about. It eventually became known as Project Serpo, but this is a science fiction author. She was so convincing with what she developed that for like 30 years, the Soviets were trying to find out who the people were that we sent to this alien planet. And I just see that as, isn't that fantastic?
That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
But that's her name was James Triptree Jr., and she was absolutely brilliant. Just an amazing lady.
I'm gonna have to look up what's that book called? Do you remember?
Well, the project is called Project Serpo, and there's a lot of stuff about it on the internet, but the author's name is James Triptree Jr.
Okay,
And,
I'm gonna have to get it. That sounds hilarious.
yeah, she's pretty amazing. I don't know, um, I don't know what the name of the book is where she details that, but the 50 years she was doing it into the 80s, and so not all the information still isn't able to come out because they have a 50-year block on it, but everything before 1976 you can read about. And then uh, a couple of people got excited when they found out about it and started generating some um, uh, extra content on the internet to make it seem like it was a real thing. But it just she was pretty amazing. Anyway, very cool stuff. And so when I find out that that author is doing another movie, like The Martian was astounding. I haven't seen Mary yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be exciting.
You need to see it in theaters. It is spectacular. I want to go see it a few more times before it leaves theaters if I could. It's so
Oh,
good.
very cool. Excellent. That's nice. That's always good to hear. Well, we have just a couple weeks left to the semester, and I wanted to talk to you guys about what I wanted to do today is look at the last things that as we wrap up, and then I wanted to show some examples of stuff and then answer people's questions and everything. And so that's why I'm really glad that you guys are both here, because then you can respond to the stuff that we're looking at and as well as ask questions, which is really good. Okay, so first off, I'm going to share my screen here. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is I re-uploaded all the images for quizzes and stuff like that, and some people still aren't getting the images showing up. Most people are, almost everybody is, and everybody does have that PDF that has all the photos in it, and it looks to me like it's the same people that are experiencing difficulties. And I wonder if it's because of different things, like if you guys have certain VPNs and certain firewalls installed on your home computers, that kind of makes sense that things aren't going to be working. Like for me, I have to make sure and disable my AVG VPN because it won't, the school system will not allow me to conduct these kinds of Teams meetings if my VPN is active. And it just not all the time, but sometimes that happens. So if you guys are having problems, if things are uploading oddly or you're not getting access to things, just double check with that and talk to Canvas tech support on campus. I really appreciate them because they are able to explain the dumbest things to me without me feeling stupid, which I really appreciate. And then after our conversation, I hang up the phone and I realize, oh, I'm the one who was being dumb. But they didn't make me feel like that while I was talking to them. So I appreciate that. So here's what the modules look like. We go all the way down, we get to the final. And I'm gonna change this really quick here because I want everybody to be able to see this. And I'm publishing it now. Okay. All right, this thing that I just opened up, the class, our classes require us to give a final as teachers. And since our online class, we are still required to do a final. If you miss the final for whatever reason, the department has mandated that you lose a full grade if the final is missed.
That
With
is crazy.
Well, there has been historically there was a significant problem,
Oh,
and this what's interesting to me though is for my finals, I'm flexible enough that the people that missed the final haven't been doing the rest of the class anyway. Because what we are doing is the first moment of finals week, I will open it up, and you guys have all of finals week to take the final. And what I would recommend is you take the final in the first day or two as soon as you see it open, because then if there's any problems, you have time to go back and fix it and resubmit it. Now, one thing I do want to point your attention to is the SRI. That there is, you guys should all have gotten emails, and if you haven't yet, you will in the next week, asking you to do a survey for your classes that you're in. And if you go to your Canvas interface, your student interface, it should be on the top right-hand corner is where the SRI links are located, but you should also get them in your email. So I would do a search in your email for SRI if you don't see them, and, for your deleted ones or whatever, and check that out as soon as you can.
I have a
Because,
quick question.
well, let me finish this thought before I lose my train of thought.
Oh,
When you get that, take it, because even though it is not graded, if you submit, and this is what this assignment is, if you submit a the screenshot of your completed SRI for this class, you get a 2% increase on your final grade. And that is enough to give you, most of the time, to give you a half grade step up. A lot of the time. It's a 2% increase. And so whatever your final score is in the class, if it's 91%, then you get that 2% increase. It bumps you up to 93%, and that gives you an A. All right. So, Kelsey, what was your question?
So with the final reflection questions, is there not really like necessarily a wrong answer then if it's a reflection question?
Well, I'm getting to, that should not have been published. Let's see. If we get here, this is the, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was showing my screen. I'm not. Hold on a sec. Okay. So if we go here, this is the online final. This is the part that will open up on the first day of finals. And there are 4 questions. They are all 4 reflection questions, just like Kelsey said. You will be graded on whether or not you have complete sentences, if you've used proper punctuation, if you remember to capitalize the first word of each of your sentences, you use proper grammar, and you have the minimum word, you meet at least the minimum word count. Each of these 4 questions, you need at least 75 words. So you just respond honestly, and that's what the final is. So again, this will be published and opened up on the first day of finals, and that's all it is. So there's not really a right or wrong answer for any of these finals questions. It is a required final that you do have to take, but you will get points for following directions essentially, and being able to articulate your ideas. And that's pretty much what it is.
You were seriously the best. Like that is the best final ever.
Thank you. But now the student SRI, notice that you don't get any points for it. What happens when you submit the student SRI, and I'll show you that again. What you're going to be submitting is an image, a screenshot of your completed survey. It'll say something like you finished the survey or something like that. And when you submit that, you don't get points for it, but I mark down that you did it. And then after everything else is submitted in all your other stuff, I will add the this 2% to your final percentage. And that's how you get the points for the SRI. So, if you have 89%, it'll go up to 91%. If you have 99%, it'll go up to 101%. Now, unlike some teachers, I I have a friend, he and his wife went to BYU in the 70s, and he and his wife took a class together. He did such a lousy job that his professor and his wife did such a good job that his professor averaged the grades between him and his wife because he knew they were married. I don't do that.
That is
Sadly,
hilarious.
I'm not going to do that. So this is how you get extra points. All
How
right.
often do you get married couples in your class?
With the art class, I've in the last since 2003, I think it's happened maybe a dozen times at the most.
That's kind of awesome.
And it was always a class that was a workshop class that was designed to be fun and not for degree seekers.
Mm.
So like things like stained glass or glass casting.
Mm.
And it did not happen very often, um, because it seemed like actually the only times that it happened that it actually worked were when the couple was just auditing, because then they didn't have any pressure against each other and they could just both have fun.
Cute.
So not very often. All right, now there's a couple things that I want to point out. One is I have not received very many of these. We're going to look at one of each of these today, and I this is an important thing to do. Everybody needs to get this done. So be mindful of it. And I would like to get it is due on Sunday. Do as many as you can, or as many of you people as possible, get this done. We will watch a couple examples today. So this is something that is coming up. And I wanted to just remind people that the stuff, everything that has been turned in, you guys can look at it, look at the points that you've missed on quizzes and things like that, and resubmit. And one thing that's been really nice is I believe both the people that are here, Anna and Kelsey, both of you guys have resubmitted stuff. And when I see that, I try to regrade it as soon as possible. Everything that has been submitted up to this point, um, I held off grading on a lot of stuff because we went over things and I gave time for people to improve. I'm just going to grade it where it is. I really hope you guys have an opportunity, take the opportunity to improve it. But also, if you haven't turned something in and it shows up as a 0, do it and turn it in. Every little bit helps. And what's interesting though is as you do the little bits, it becomes a big bit and it becomes a significant help. One of my favorite stories is about a young man who was having a really difficult time during COVID because both of his parents were sick with COVID and he fell way behind. He had like an F plus, D minus, right at that range. And he had decided that he was just going to um, take the class again and lose that tuition. So it was about this far from the end of the semester. It was 2 weeks from the end of the semester. And I asked him why he hadn't been turning stuff in. And he said, "Oh, I just assumed I couldn't." I said, "No, turn everything you got done in. And then once you do that, go back through and fix the things you don't have perfect scores on." And he did that. He turned in bunches of stuff very quickly. And by the end of the term, he had brought his D minus grade up to an A minus. So do that. Take care of it. Get the stuff turned in. And I really appreciate the people when I've said things to fix, they've gone ahead and fixed it. I really very much appreciate that. So what we are going to be doing is, oh no, and there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about too. I'm going to do another screen share. Okay, here we go. Now, the last couple projects that people have, we're going to look at a few of these today. We're going to look at a couple of these today. But the last really big thing is going through and applying texture and light to your carving, to the carving that you've done the paper mache on. And as you look at this, this is the grading: application of color, application of texture, and evidence of time expended. I want you guys to pay attention to this. You can use all the stuff that you've already done for the rest of the semester. People have taken apart their wire sculptures and structure and skin and applied them as part of the texture to this thing, or even as elements of color. And I'm going to show you a couple good examples and a couple not so good examples. And we're going to talk about each of them. The biggest thing is this carving that you applied the paper mache to, that's what you're going to be using as the base. You're painting it, you're applying color to it, and you're applying texture to it. And that's your final thing. Well, it's almost that's one of your final things. Another one of your final things is go all the way down here. Your final thoughts regarding the artist research and service learning. And that's your 5-paragraph opinion essay about your artist or your final reflection on the service learning that you did. and somebody took a lot of photos of their service learning project, and that was you, right?
Yeah, that was me.
Were you able to submit that with the photos?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right then. I'm going to stop sharing and uh, I'm just going to step out of what I had planned because I want to share these with you guys. And Anna, if you don't mind, it'd be awesome to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the project.
Okay. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of showing this. I have to show it with your name info. Is that it? Just so that I can show the photos? Is that going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to do this and we're going to cycle through the photos. All right. Anna, can you tell a little bit about what is going on here? What your project is about?
Yeah, so my project was teaching this class how to paint something that related to what they were learning. I don't know how in depth you want me to go on it.
Well, if you could just describe a little bit about how you got involved with it and what you were doing. Okay, you just said that um, what were they learning and how did you get involved in teaching them this class?
This class was a class on unlocking their dreams. So what we painted was symbolic of that. Originally, it was just supposed to be a keyhole with a pretty meadow on the other side, but I thought that might be too difficult for a bunch of beginners, and so I changed it to be the starry scene, and I thought that related to dreams better.
Okay,
It also allowed them to make theirs more unique to them and their dream because they could draw something that related to it in the sky, like a constellation.
okay.
And how
How
I
did you?
got,
That's pretty cool.
oh,
How did you get involved with it?
I got involved with it because this, my mom, she is an assistant for this class, and my brother and his friend, they are in the class. So that's how I found out about it.
Oh, okay. How long did it take you to prepare for the class, and then how long did it take you to teach it?
It took me maybe, it's hard to remember, like at least 4 hours to get everything ready. And what you're seeing right here is um, on the right, that's mine. And on the left, that is my mom's. We were doing a demo
Okay,
just to make sure everything would work.
excellent, very cool. That I love that all those students and everything that you were working with. It looked like they were really paying attention to you as well.
They were that the teachers in the room were saying, "This is the quietest they've ever been. They're so focused."
Because they're so focused. That's awesome. I love the fact that you did this. You found something that was specific to your skill set as an artist, and you were able to do that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Good. Because if it had sucked, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Very cool. All right. Let's step back into, and thank you, Anna. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot and doing that. I really appreciate that. All right. Next, I want to share with you we examples of the peer and self critiques, and we're going to look at these, and then we will watch one. I want to talk about it and hear input from both of you. Then we're going to watch the next one and hear input from both of you. So, and this is sometimes it's really hard to be the first person doing this, but I really appreciate what you guys have been doing. So let me get again screen share. Okay, there we go. You guys ready? Okay, this is the peer critique for this class. And I hope you guys can recognize which assignment it is. Notice that this person did 3 minutes, 18 seconds. The time expectation for this is between 3 and 5 minutes, so this is perfect.
I'm going to critique this piece using the 4 tools of artist critique, such as describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. Starting with describe, this piece looks like a small hand-built house or a hut placed in a natural outdoor setting. The structure has a rounded shape with what looks like a wood-textured exterior and a shingled roof. The roof has overlapping layers that give it a lot of detail and texture. There's a green door on the front and a small circular window off to the side with a warm yellow glow. This piece is sitting in grass with a rock wall behind it, which makes it feel like it belongs in the environment. And overall, it has a very natural, earthy look, and everything feels handmade. For analyze, the artist uses texture really well throughout the piece. The roof shingles create repetition, which adds rhythm and draws your eye across the top of the structure. There's also a nice contrast between the rough texture in the roof and the walls, as well as the smoother areas like the door. The shape of the house is mostly rounded, which gives it a softer, more organic feel compared to something very rigid or geometric. The colors are also pretty controlled, mostly earthy tones like the browns and greens, which help everything feel unified. The piece feels balanced overall, even though it's not perfectly symmetrical, and the placement in the grass adds to that sense of stability. For interpret, this piece feels like it's meant to represent something peaceful or even connected to nature. It almost has a storybook or a fantasy feel, like a small hidden home you might find in the woods. Also, the use of natural colors and textures make it feel very calm and inviting. The glowing window suggests that it's lived in, which adds a sense of warmth and life to this piece. It could be about simplicity or even the idea of a quiet place that's away from everything else. And overall, it gives off a really calm and slightly imaginative vibe. And finally, in evaluate, I think this piece is really successful, especially in how it uses texture and setting to create a strong overall feel. And one of the strongest parts is how well it fits into the environment. It doesn't feel separate from the grass and rocks, it feels like it belongs there. And the attention to detail in the roof and the small elements like the door and window really help to bring it to life. If anything could be improved, maybe pushing the contrast a little more in certain areas could help create a stronger focal point, like around the door or window. But overall, this piece does a really good job of creating a clear mood and showing how simple materials and forms can come together to create something interesting and engaging.
All right. What did you guys think about that?
I thought it was great. I'm assuming this is Anna. Sounds like her voice.
Well, it's actually
It is not me.
It's not you.
No, yeah, the name of the person is right there in the title.
Oh, oh.
No, I
I
really like this too. I one thing that I really like about it is, and this does not happen all the time. I was just looking when I was watching this, every once in a while I was looking at the time. They pretty well evenly divided up the time. The description, opening it up, was a little bit longer, but a lot of the times people will have a tendency when they get down to evaluate to just do pass it over quickly. And I appreciated the fact that Samantha did a really good job, really going in depth at each of the four tools. So I thought that was really good. What do you think, Anna? Now that we know it's not you.
I had to walk outside because it got loud in there. I think it was great. And like you said, I appreciate that each section of critique had about the same length. Um, there wasn't much critiquing like what could have gone better, which I thought was interesting. So we're not really supposed to include that, right? If we
Right.
don't think,
Samantha mentioned maybe adding more contrast, but the critique is intentional observation. It's not telling somebody how to improve something. You know,
Mhm.
if there are things that you are comfortable with talking about, you can say that, but that's not an intention, that's not a purpose behind our critiques. Our critiques are just looking at the object itself and being able to talk about it. So you're right. Yeah. And Samantha did not spend a long time. She mentioned one thing and that was it. She went on. And that's just fine. So one thing that one reason for that is because unless you are really comfortable with the assignment and you're addressing how the person is approaching the assignment, we don't really know what the artist is thinking. And so it's kind of hard, unless you know the artist directly and you worked with them, it's kind of hard to evaluate that with um, uh, any sort of validity. I think I just and you're going to have other classes where other teachers tell you different things, and you're going to have teachers where they will ask you to say one thing they could do better, or to
Mhm.
say what they could do better, but that's not what we're doing in this class. So, Anna, you're entirely right.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I part of that is because I have been in classes before. We've had when I was at grad school, we would have visiting artists that would critique our works, and it always irritated the snot out of me if the visiting artist had a different worldview than mine and would harass me for how my worldview failed to match theirs. So that just yeah that's not appropriate. So but yeah, and I remember um, as when I was working on my pluralist chaplain training, I did a series of artworks that were just exploring other worldviews and just kind of showing what I was finding out about them. And this guy knew that I was raised LDS, and so he was harassing me about why don't you show the LDS worldview? And it bothered me so much because it was from that question, it was obvious to me that he did not understand LDS theology. And so I have a hard time. Now, if it's somebody like Sharon or Jason, I will listen all day, sun up, sundown, throughout the entire week to have them tell me what to do better. But for most people, they don't know what you're doing. So I say, don't even worry about it. So thank you, Anna, for letting me go on a slight diatribe. Okay, here's the next one. This is a self-critique by Samantha. And notice again how long she's doing it. 3:34. I am so grateful. I told you guys about the how long people have done this stuff before, haven't I? Like
Yeah, I think you
one,
said someone went an hour over
well,
before.
there were two that come right to mind. One was 14 minutes long, and another one was 37 minutes. And I'm
Okay.
sure that there were worse ones too. Those are just the two that my brain has not decided were so traumatic that it's blocked from my memory.
Oh, that's
But
hilarious.
you can cover most of what you need to in 3 minutes for the purpose of this class. This is just designed so that you can share your facility with this process. What I do like about this process, though, is it does not matter what field you go into, or what field you're addressing, or what element you're addressing. When you use these four tools, they can be applied to absolutely anything. Um, I spoke at UVU a couple weeks ago. My presentation was on dragons. They do have a recording. They're editing it, and as soon as it comes out, I will share it with you guys. If it happens in the next week, I will put it up so that you guys can get extra credit watching it. But I the presentation was designed to be an hour long. I did it in 45 minutes, and the whole thing was an application of the tools of artistic critique. So, it really depends on the situation you find yourself in. When you have that intentional thinking, I mean, I love seeing artists like you guys use this kind of process of intentional thinking, because the rest of you classes that you take at UVU, it gives you opportunities to demonstrate your intelligence. And people can be super smart, but without that vocabulary and without that framework to use, they're not confident enough to express it. So I'm hoping that this gives you guys the confidence you need to show off what you already got. All right, so we're going to go ahead and watch this. This is the self-critique. Here we go.
Piece using the four tools of artist critique, such as describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. Starting with describe. This piece appears to be a three-dimensional sculpture made out of thin black wire. The form resembles a simplified vehicle, possibly a small car or a truck, with visible elements such as the wheels, the body frame, the antenna, and the raised top section. The wire has been bent and twisted to create the structure, with some areas appearing more tightly wrapped and others more loosely formed. The lines are continuous and linear, giving the object an open and transparent quality rather than a solid piece. The wheels are circular and defined, while the body is more rectangular and slightly uneven. Moving on to analyze, I use line as the primary design element, with the entire structure built from continuous wire lines that define both shape and space. There's a strong use of repetition, especially in the horizontal lines that run along the body of the vehicle and in the circular forms of the wheels. This piece demonstrates asymmetrical balance, as the form is not perfectly even, but it still feels stable and grounded. There's also contrast between tightly twisted areas and more open, loosely spaced sections, which add visual interest. The negative space plays an important role, as the empty areas between the wires help to define the overall form just as much as the wire itself. And the viewer eye is guided along the contours of this piece, moving from the back to through the continuous flow of line. For the interpret stage, this piece could represent the idea of transforming everyday objects into something creative and unexpected. The use of simple wire to construct a recognizable object like a vehicle suggests that the ordinary materials can be reimagined into something more artistic. It may also reflect themes of simplicity and structure, showing how complex forms can be built from basic elements. The open framework might symbolize transparency or the idea of breaking an object down to its essential structure. And then finally in evaluate, this piece is successful in demonstrating how a simple material can be used to create a recognizable and engaging three-dimensional form. One of its strengths is the clear use of the line to define both the shape and movement, which keeps the viewers visually engaged. The balance between the structure and openness works well, along with the form to feel light while still being stable. One area that can be improved is the consistency of construction, as some areas feel more refined than others. I could potentially enhance the piece by creating more intentional variations or refining certain sections to strengthen the overall composition. And overall, the work effectively explores the transformation of a basic material into a dynamic and visual interesting object.
All right, this is there are a couple good things that Samantha did that I appreciate. One is just as Anna mentioned, they did talk a little bit about one thing that could be improved, but they didn't dwell on it, and that's just fine. You know, we're not worried about that. So another thing they did was keep it to that time frame, 3 to 5 minutes. I really appreciated Samantha being very clear about, you know, we're describing, now we're analyzing, now we're interpreting, talking through all that. And I, it always makes me happy when you develop, as people are doing this, you develop the describe element really, really well, and you develop the analyze element really, really well, because then you can use those uh, elements of vocabulary and observations to bolster and support everything else that you do. And that's exactly what Samantha did, which I think is really well done. And I also noticed that she only mentioned I think twice. Once was in the analyze where she talked about how she made it, and the other was in the evaluation where she was saying how she could improve it. So I thought that was well done. What did you guys think?
I felt the same. I really liked how she talked about, like, she's like, now I'm analyzing, now I'm doing this before each one. It made it really easy to follow. And she did a really good job about like not bolstering, like, look at how amazing I am, like you told us not to do. She didn't do that at all. And so I feel like this was the perfect example for all of us before we go do our own. So I think she did a great job.
Yeah, I think they did well. How about you, Anna? What did you think?
Um, yeah, I think they did a great job. You guys have pretty much said it all.
I really liked how she talked about the things that were interesting to me looking at it. You know, like paying attention to the balance on the left-hand image and paying attention to this kind of thing where the wires wrapped really tightly in different areas. I thought that was kind of cool. The same things that I was interested in were the same things that Samantha focused on too. That's pretty neat. All right, excellent. So that is what everybody's going to be doing pretty soon, and you can do it just like the way that they did it. Samantha did it is just right. Having a screen with just the image there in front of us, so that's the only thing that we see, and then going through the 4 steps. You don't have to identify the steps as you go through them. You can just go through them, but it doesn't hurt to identify them either. I thought they did that really well. Uh, there are some things that I did want to mention again for people. I haven't had anybody do it this semester yet, but if you do have social anxiety and you don't feel comfortable with your voice being recorded, that is totally fine. You write it out and use a voiceover, an AI voiceover to read it, or have a friend, a relative, or somebody you just, you know, tap the shoulder of on the street and needs a couple extra bucks to read it for you and record that voice. That's totally fine. We've had um, Rumpel the Bailey and Elmer Fudd be the voices before. I think one of the coolest ones about a year and a half ago, somebody was able to do something that sounded an awful lot like James Earl Jones, and that was pretty awesome. There is not anything that is not made better with like James Earl Jones or Morgan Freeman or Patrick Stewart or Helen Mirren. Those voices are like the voices of God, and I, yeah, they make everything better. So think about Andy Serkis, maybe not so much. His voice is designed to engage you, and it doesn't have that same kind of soporific calming effect on me as like James Earl Jones and Helen Mirren. Vanessa Williams is another voice that yeah, those are nice voices. Anyway, whatever you guys want to do, it is really funny. The one that was Elmer Fudd was hilarious, and they were all being, they wrote out everything so super serious, and then with Elmer Fudd reading it, it was great. All right, now what I'm going to do is I want to go over the Readymades and Cocoon ones, but before we do that, I want to show you the examples I mentioned regarding the Mighty Voltron sculpt, the last thing we're supposed to be doing for this class. So I'm going to kind of switch this over now. And as we do this, if you guys want to ask questions or whatever, that'll be just fine. But I will share with you some good examples and some not as good examples. Okay. So can everybody see this?
Yes. Sorry, it took me a minute.
All right, excellent. Okay, so all right. Now you notice right away that they painted this and then put those hot beads or whatever on as a texture. There are a couple things. One is notice how they photograph this. These lines can be distracting. And when it's part of what you're doing, like we've had a couple ready-made examples where they took a photo so it had to look like it was on a pedestal and stuff like that. That is one thing. This, when we talked about infinity screens, using a sheet, using the on-campus photo lab, the focus should be on your work. All right. And you don't have to paint that other piece of foam that you have as a base. If you want to use it as a base, I've had several people that have just wrapped it with paper, and that's totally fine too. These kinds of things, like having the edge of the foam apparent, having these lines, they're just distracting. But if we look at the sculpture itself, what's a couple of things that are disappointing to me is we only have one color of paint. It's just black, which is not necessarily bad, but how many textures do we have? We don't have a selection of textures either. We basically just have the smooth texture of the sculpture, and we have this. Now, looking at this, the first thing I think of is how cool would it be to, like, even in between these rings, put in uh, quilter pins that have the big round heads. That would make a nice counterpoint. And just do that, even doing that every third ring would make an incredibly interesting texture.
How many
Or
textures are we supposed to have in this project? Is there a
I would
required?
I would say, well, we'll look at the best examples, and it does vary, but I would say do it, step away, come back, and do it more. You can't do too much. And the
Okay.
reason why I'm not really happy with this one is because it's one color of paint and one texture, and that's it. This does make it, this is kind of interesting. The color bands is really interesting. It is that kind of that uh, unplanned, color scheme that we looked at. But still, even with putting like T-pins in and every other ring or something like that would make this interesting. Or replacing these rings with beads would make it really interesting. Stuff like that I think can make it really fascinating. But just having one texture does make it, as viewers, is not nearly as interesting as it could be. So I'm going to go through a couple of these. Okay. Okay, we look at this one. Right away, see that the sculpture, they didn't respond to any of the stuff that I was writing about, how it needs to be rounded and organic. So it still feels rather blocky. It doesn't look like they did a lot of painting because we can still see the newsprint. And those things aren't necessarily bad by themselves, but it looks to me like they got confused with the cocooning project on this. And you can do wrapping, you can do cocooning, but it just doesn't feel like, this is supposed to be a showcase where you demonstrate your comfort with exploring things like texture and color. And there's a place for all sorts of different kinds of expressions of color, but it looks to, it's one of those things that looks to me like, especially with the other stuff that that student did, um, it it doesn't look like it was much of an expensive effort. And I'm making sure that we can hide the names and stuff so you don't know who these people are, because I don't want you to know. This one I think is really fascinating to me. We have somehow they were able to get a very, very shiny gold that was really consistent. That is not easy to do. And I love this kind of color scheme that they have going on. The complementary color kind of stuff going on. Now, again, they did not use an awful lot of texture, but what they did was, I think, is really fascinating. Having this be all one color, having it be reflective, and then tie into this as a different shade of the same color. On this object, it works pretty well. There's a lot of stuff going on, and by spray painting it or doing this shiny gold, it allows the texture of the sculpture itself to become an actual active element of the sculpture. And then notice that they took their wire, spray painted it blue, and added it in as well. So I think this is a pretty good example of the kind of thing that we're working towards. I think that one turned out pretty well. And so, in answer to your question, Kelsey, um, if there's a lot of stuff going on in your sculpture, then you don't need as much texture. If your sculpture is a little bit more minimalistic, then maybe more texture is needed.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna need it. This is mine. It's like a little donut thing.
Looking at something like this is one of those where it is really, really fascinating, and I wish that they would have just kept adding to it. And this sculpture is a tiny sculpture. It is small, but some of the things that would make this really stand out is putting it in front of an infinity screen instead of something that has the distracting line there. And if you can't get away from the line, you can use different lights to really brighten this up. But the photo itself does not show this off very well. And if we look at some of these textures are really interesting, but spending just another hour or two on them would make this really fascinating. Like, for example, this area here with sewing it, that's an incredibly cool idea. What about doing a lot more sewing? And make almost trying to make patterns with the sewing. That would have been really fantastic. And this color, it almost looks like they used a tissue paper collage to get the color. Doing that is really fascinating underneath. And one of the reasons why this was not as successful as it could be is because they had these great ideas and just did not continue with them. I think this is a really fascinating texture. This is really interesting. But something like this, where it's just foil put on, is not as interesting as something like this. Something like this is made more interesting if the edge is uneven or rounded or reflects the shape that it fits on or wraps around. Like I said, this is a really interesting idea, and this would look so much more cool what if they did this stitching and did like 3 times as much stitching to really emphasize that texture. Right now, it doesn't feel like a texture. It just feels like random stitches. But if you can't think of it as a texture, then it can become something a lot more. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. Oh, no, I want to show you this one too. This is a good example of excellent texture, but not really doing a good job with the color. And I want to share that with you. I think this is a beautiful object. I think it's an amazing carving. The carving is absolutely wonderful. And look, they wrapped tissue paper around the base. That's really cool. The photo is nicely done. If anything, they could have lit it a little bit brighter, but all that is great. The only thing that is really problematic, I mean, I love the textures, lots of creativity to the textures. The only thing problematic is it's monochromatic. There's only one color. And part of doing that whole exercise with the textures and colors is finding things you can do to explore that color. So in this case, even if you want to have it be monochromatic, have 3, 4, or 4 shades of this pink, and then use those shades to add elements of visual texture to it. For example, brightening up, maybe make these areas between the nodules lighter and the tops of these a little bit darker. Play with the ideas of what light and dark and shadow will do to something. Maybe spraying a different shade of the pink on this tissue paper and seeing what that does texturally, but also color-wise. This, I think this one could have been a lot stronger with just a little bit more um, energy put into exploring the color.
I had a question about it. So, about how long should we be working on adding the texture and color?
Let's I don't know if I have a specific time frame for that, but it's one of those things where I think if you stop too soon, you'll know. This object should take 5 or 6 hours at least, I think. Not as much as the original sculpture. I don't think you need to do that much, but um, we should be doing 5 or 6 hours. And again, that we have to be a little bit flexible. I have to be a little bit flexible on that because sometimes you can get really cool effects with not an awful lot of time. But if you do, I've had a lot of people, some of these that we've looked at, they spent an hour and a half on it. We want more, definitely more than an hour and a half. Okay, I want to show you an example of a really good one.
I missed some of that. It just randomly booted me out.
Oh, well, it was really profound. At one point, Kelsey was crying. You don't know, you missed so much.
Yeah, you missed out. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was like Shakespeare, Shakespeare on roller skates. It was amazing. No, what I'm saying is that 5 or 6 hours probably, but it will be flexible depending on what you're doing. However, if you only spend an hour or two on this, you know you're not getting anywhere. What I would suggest is work on this, step away from it, give it a day, go back, work on it more. When you think you're done, go back to an hour later and add more. And look at this example. This is a really good example of what the person has done. Now they use some of their structure and skin kind of components to it. I look at what they've done color wise. They've used a couple different, they've used their color scheme is, I don't know if it's tetradic or triadic, but they've used a lot of different colors. Notice how they applied the paint. So even looking at the field areas of color, it's kind of fun. But they used elements from other ones of their sculptures that they made that they've stuck on. These elements, these sticks and stuff, are stuff that were inspired and adapted from their structure and skin. They even spray painted this kind of netting that you get. Uh, I don't know if it's pears. I think it's pears in, and they put that netting on after spray painting it, and just did a bunch of fun stuff. So this is one where they took the time to paint it, went over and added different colors of paint, different layers of paint, stepped away from it, saw what else they could do, came back, put on these other elements of texture. So there's not an awful lot of different textures here, but what I like is how they applied it. It's not just we're going to make a square patch of one texture here, square patch of another texture here. It's kind of feeling out what makes sense visually for the sculpture itself.
Quick question for you. So
Okay.
is the parameters of this assignment to like bring all of our projects together as one, or is this just something like a creative choice students have made?
It's a creative choice. You
Okay.
can do it. And when I first taught the class, I required people to put all their stuff together, and I had so many meltdowns. It was just not worth it
Oh, why were they having meltdowns?
because everybody had been doing 2D stuff. Nobody knew how to do that.
Oh,
And it was too hard for them to get that to work in their brains. So
that makes sense.
they didn't want to do it.
Okay, I don't want to like disassemble my other projects because I love them so much, but
Then
I
don't.
will definitely try doing that because that one you just showed us was so cool. That was
Well,
really neat.
I would not recommend, if you don't want to disassemble them, don't disassemble them. Don't take them apart. But you can use that, like that one person I just showed,
Yeah, the
they
concept.
they they use some of those concepts, and that's what you can do. So this is a really fun one too. And okay, the color scheme is complementary. We got purple and yellow. But look at what they've done with it. I mean, they wrapped the base with paper and they dribbled some of the paint down onto the paper to kind of connect them. Some of these textures, you can see these are all little flower buds from the Dollar Tree uh, silk flowers, And then we've got some kids' beads in there that they've glued on and stuff. Not filling whole areas of it, but making it so it feels like it flows together. We have a group of purple beads, but it doesn't feel like a patch. We have areas where there's glue and glitter and texture and stuff like that, but it doesn't feel like it's a patch that they're done with and walk away from. In areas like up this, right here with the glitter and glue, are echoed over here on the base. And some of these kinds of color spreading and stuff like that dribbles down and is used in the base as well. And then they have this yarn use to kind of tie everything together. And what I like about this is that I think it's a good balance of all this stuff where they don't have, it's not localized to one area or another. It's not, it doesn't feel like it's contained. It feels like the whole thing kind of flows together. Are you guys seeing that as well?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I do have a question though. It's a common thing that I'm seeing in a lot of these. I could still see the newspaper kind of through the paint, like it's not perfectly smooth. And it is taking me forever to finish mine. Like mine's still on paper mache mode because I'm trying to sand this down to like perfectly smooth. And so I guess I'm wondering like, does it matter like if it's perfectly, is it okay that it's,
You want to get it as smooth as possible within reason. And I say that because I have had people that have gotten it so smooth it looked like Japanese nanobots from 3,000 years in the future did it.
yeah, you've shown us some of those, and I'm like, that's the expectation in my mind, and I'm like, oh, it's taking me forever. I've spent so many hours sanding because I'm
Well,
like, it's gotta be perfect.
you may get to a point where submit it, ask me about it, see what what I tell you, and what I'm looking for is we don't want to have obvious wrinkles. We don't want to have obvious flaps of paper sticking up. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but I would get it as close as you can without spending 15 hours on it.
I think
You
I'm
know,
over that. I think I'm over 15 hours.
oh, really? Then
It's
stop.
taking me forever.
Stop doing it right now and just turn it in.
Okay, I haven't even done my second layer of newspaper though.
Oh, well, do the second layer, right? Stop sanding it, do the second layer, and
Okay,
then after that dries, sand it so you don't have a lot of bumps and wrinkles, and then
just
turn
do
it
it.
in and we'll look at it.
Okay.
Okay, now this is a good example of that, where you can see that there are areas where it's not entirely smooth. Now, to be honest, this was pretty smooth when they did the paper mache, and how they got this texture was actually um, doing decoupage paper on it to build this texture up. You see what I'm saying? Right this texture right through here, and a little bit of that. And
Yeah,
then after
that's
doing
kind
the
of like
decoupage, they went over and painted it.
that's kind
And,
of what led me to wondering, like, does it need to be perfectly smooth since we're adding all this texture on top anyway? You know?
and I think that's a really good question because the answer is it needs to be smooth enough that you have control over applying the texture. It
I,
should not have folds and wrinkles of paper that are obvious, pockets of paper, stuff like that. Um, it should not have that because then you don't have control over the texture. But when you get to a point where you can use it as a canvas for applying the color and texture, then that should be good. And if you think I'm being unreasonable when I'm graded, just let me know.
deal.
Oh, this one I like because this person they did get it pretty smooth, but these areas were kind of hard to get smooth. But with that, looking at that texture, what they were doing is after doing the paper mache with the newspaper, they went back and used paper towels and applied paper towels with glue and a brush, and that's what got them this texture on those black areas.
This sculpture is amazing.
And then
This
this
sculpture.
this area here, they tore up a whole bunch of round pieces of, they didn't paint it this part. They tore up a whole bunch of round pieces of tissue paper and applied that on top of it with the decoupage kind of thing. And
Oh,
so they built up the color with the tissue paper. So this part is painted black with the orange inside. The same kind of thing down here. This area was built up with the decoupage. That's how they got that color. And then look at what they did. They they found or they cut up the little wood pieces that you get in your kit. And then they just got a whole bunch of this kind of turquoisey blue um, cardstock that matched what they had used. This is from their structure and skin. And I think you can probably tell that they used tetrahedrons, but they took that apart. And this paper that they had used for their skin, they just matched the color with his cardstock and made these kind of little ripple kind of folds and used that to make a really interesting texture here where it almost looks like twine. And then you can see how they coiled it up into little flowers and stuff right here. So this is a fantastic one. This is really an exceptional one. So yeah, they did a lot of work on this one. And I'm glad you said you liked it because yeah, it's I don't know what it represents. It is completely unimportant, but they did a lot of really fun work in it.
Yeah, it's when you show us art like that that it inspires me and it gets my creative wheels turning, gets me excited to do one myself.
Now I'm going to show you another one that I think has a really good ideas, but if this person had spent another couple hours on it, it would have been fantastic. Okay, so this one, the one we just saw, the colors of that one whole area were not painted. They were colors made by gluing on overlapping tissue paper. And this person had access to a lot of the same materials. What is problematic to me about this one is that it's all the same texture. It's all tissue paper. Another thing that's a little problematic is, you know, if you don't crop your photo right, you're going to get little stuff like this showing up. And if you don't get the wrinkles out, you're going to get stuff like this showing up. And that detracts a lot from the focal point should be on the sculpture you're making. So some of the things that this person could have done is they would have gotten a couple more points just by straightening up the photo, you know, taking a clear photo. And then something that they could have done is get a disposable spray bottle and put watered down glue in it and just spray this thing and see what that does. And if that's interesting, spray it again, spray it some more. Maybe add color to the glue and spray it. See what that does. Maybe get paint on a toothbrush or a toilet brush and apply textural paint like that. One thing you can do is water down acrylics and then mix it with a whole bunch of baking soda, and that will give you a fantastic colored texture to paint with. You know, just fun stuff like that. But they did this and they turned this in like right before the end of this term. So you didn't have an opportunity to really change much. So but that's an example of one that with a little bit more effort could have become something really spectacular.
I think that's one of the biggest downsides to a lot of these is time. Like I bet a lot of these would just be magnificent if that person had more time.
Well, it is, and it's not so much having more time, it's more applying the time because the ones that I'm showed you that didn't quite make it are ones where the person spent 3 or 4 hours and that's it.
Right.
And when I'm talking about 5 or 6 hours, just a little bit more time on it, or even when you're walking by and doing something when you think about it, it doesn't have to be hours. It can be 15 minutes here and there.
Right.
But it's uh, just applying something to it. Now, this one is really fascinating. This is one of those where things were going pretty good, but look at this right here. All they would have had to do before mounting this on, wrap this with white paper or something, and that that would have added another point or two, or another point or two, just because the crappy edge of the cut foam is distracting. And then look how they mounted it on. You guys see what that is?
Yeah, it's painter's tape.
Yeah, exactly. All
I
they
look
had,
at this and I see they ran out of time. They're
well,
like,
and the thing is, they didn't. I mean, it would have taken you another 10 minutes to wrap this with paper, and it would have taken you 5 or 6 minutes to punch the skewers through the paper into the foam, and then use that on the base of this. So it was more running out of interest and deciding that they didn't have any more time.
Maybe.
Do you see what I'm saying?
The rest of it looks so good though, and it
Yeah,
looks like
it's
they put a
incredible.
ton of
Look at
time
all
in it.
these textures. Look at this. And they made their own infinity screen. That's awesome too. And this is fantastic. The rest of it is fantastic. But when you do something like this, it tells me that you've kind of lost interest and it really does not show off what you have done very well.
What I'm sad about is when they go to take that tape off and put a proper, skewers or something in it, it's going to damage the original piece.
Yeah, and I, it would, but that's something that you could have that they could have mitigated too. If that was the case, then get some more of this pink stuff put there, put some more green stuff there, and put the skewers through this part.
Yeah,
Turn it upside down, and that would be fantastic. You know, or if
that's
it
true.
really damaged this, go to the Dollar Tree and see if they have like a or Dollar Tree or DI or something like that. See if they can get a boa, a feather boa that's pink, or
Oh,
something that's green, and just put that out there as an additional texture.
that's
There are a
cool.
lot of things that they can do that wouldn't take very much time. So, this was, but I wanted to show you guys this. A couple of these, if the person spent just a few minutes fixing it and having respect for the work that they put in already, it would be that much better. So, now the total points is 25. They got 23 out of 25. That's an A minus, but they could have gotten an A. So, something to think about. That was from last year. And I'm hoping that that is something to think about because I want you guys to be thinking, you know what? I'm going to go back I'm going to, try to get this done a couple days early. And then I'm going to go back and look at it again in a day when I'm working on something else. Think of, give my brain time to think about it and then see what else I can do. Now, the end of the term is April 24th, but I think it's really important for you guys to remember you can continue working on stuff and turning it in through to the end of the term. Okay. And if you need more days past the 24th, let me know because I think I have a few days of leeway. And what I am doing right now is let's see, we have about 20, is that right? Is that 10 minutes, 12 minutes? I want to look at a couple things really quick. I want to look at a couple of the ready-mades that were turned in that we haven't seen yet. And I want to look at a couple of it looks like we do have some cocoons that have been turned in. And I want to look at a few of those too. Now, I have not graded I've graded a lot of stuff. I've not graded these projects because we had some conversations last week that I was really hoping that people would uh, change things. That they would take an opportunity to make improvements, but mm, that did not happen.
I'm so sorry if I'm one of those people. I have been so focused on this thing. Like, this has taken up all of my time.
Well, and that's fine. I am going to grade everything, get everything graded by this weekend. So, but I want people, if people are, um, oh, how can I say this? I want to get everything graded by this weekend. I just want people to understand that they do have an opportunity to change their grades, and get things improved. So let's see. All right. What I'm doing is trying to set these up so I can show you guys these images. And I'm trying to make sure that you don't see the names. Okay. So we're going to share this. All right, now we're going to look at a couple of these ready-made. I'm going to show a ready-made, then I'm going to show a cocoon, and we'll just keep going back and forth like that. There's a couple of things that I like right off the bat on this. One is the way they photographed it, hanging it. That is unusual. It's not standard. And the way they um, lit it, you have the shadow on the wall or whatever behind it. I think that's a really interesting way of doing this. Um, the only thing that might improve the photo would be using brighter light, because I really think they did a nice setup with the photo. We look at this. Yes, it's a glass pitcher. Obviously, it's for serving coffee. And the new title is Fountain of Youth. I love that. And they say that they hung it like this so it looks like it's perpetually pouring. I love that because Fountain of Youth is ambiguous enough that you can start having all sorts of different connotations. And I think that that is really fun to have a title like that that's flexible and ambiguous. And then, yeah, and I love this. They're a little bit tongue in cheek, giving the water of life or lovingly crafted coffee. I think that's great. This is they've done some really fun things with this. And I think this is a good example. Okay, and then I'm going to show the wrapped object. Now, this I think is really interesting. I think it's a great start. The biggest difference between the cocoon and the ready-made is the ready-made, you're recontextualizing an object, and for the cocoon, you are making a new object. You're wrapping an object so we don't see the um, original silhouette, and you're wrapping it intentionally. And this one, I think it's really interesting, and I like how they're starting to do this. But one of the things that is so amazing to me about Jean-Claude and Christo is that when they wrapped with string, they were paying attention to how the string fit on it. I like this, but I think that this could be made better by being a bit more intentional with wrapping the string and making the string look almost like a sketch across it or something. I think that could be really interesting because when we don't do that, it looks like we just tied a package. And this has a danger of looking like that. And I think an easy way to resolve that would be to get some more of this thin twine and wrap it from this edge where my mouse is up to this edge, and then maybe wrapping it the other way a little bit, but being a little bit intentional about it. And I think that would make it really fantastic. And as you guys have seen before, when I grade stuff after talking about it, the if the grade isn't exactly the same as what I talked about, you guys all you always get the benefit of a doubt too. Okay. All right, so here we're going back to the ready-made. All right, this is interesting. And we've talked about distracting areas from and photos and stuff like that before. I think that this one is designed to look like it's on a pedestal, and so I think that that's okay. The only thing that I think is distracting is that this edge and this edge are not even, but it's not a really big thing for me. I think this would look better if this was cropped a little bit on this side, but I love the dramatic lighting. I love the fact that it's on a pedestal. So the title is Monster in the Shed, and it's just a saw. But I love how they have they've done the dramatic lighting, they've done this kind of thing, calling it Monster in the Shed. It is a bit ambiguous, but with the dramatic lighting, I like what they're doing with it. I think that's really cool. I love the dramatic shadow. And it's not hanging up and it's not laying down. It's at this kind of interesting angle. I think that is really kind of fun. And I love how they're addressing how much they dislike, their apprehension about bladed things. So that is looking good. And I hope one thing that you notice as we do these things, the ready-made, a lot of the art comes with your description, and the cocooning, a lot of it comes just kind of feeling out how a cocoon should look three-dimensionally. Okay, and this we're going back to the cocoon. There's a couple things that I think we need to talk about this. One is I think this deserves a better place to photograph it in. If you simply don't have the space, that's one thing. But something like this would look a lot better photographed in an area where we didn't see the floor butting up against this horizontal white line in the wall. Using a sheet to photograph in front of would make this better, I think. Another thing I want to point out is it's a chair. It's wrapped in a single sheet, but look at what they're doing with the rope. Now, this winding thing, this doesn't seem like it's really well thought out, but I really like what they're doing right here. I like the fact that they're being intentional through this area. This is open up and loose. This is tighter. And then we have the intentional winding here. So, and I like that aspect of it. I like uh, from here down, it looks like the winding is really intentional. From here up, not as much. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes. Why do you feel like why it's not intentional there? Curious.
Well, maybe it'll grow on me, but look right here. It's crisscrossing.
Okay.
And right here, it's open.
Uh-huh.
On the seat, notice these two are close together. These are kind of far apart. This has a completely different texture to it. And look right here, how it's looking like it's crisscrossing a little bit.
Okay.
And then all of these are parallel.
All right. I see what you're saying.
Like they almost lost interest and just wound it like that. And I think with this kind of intention right here, this doesn't feel like the same kind of level of thought went into it. And what would be really fascinating to me is even just doing two or three strands that are at a different, at a mirrored angle, like maybe from here down to here, maybe from here over here, but just so it has that same kind of feel of intentionality.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, give me just a second. I'm going back to another ready-made. Okay, it looks like we looked at most of the ready-mades. Like I said, I should have all of that rated pretty soon. Anna, did we? Yeah, we did. Okay, never mind. The rest of the question was, Anna, did we look at your ready-made from last week? And we did. Okay, so we looked at all those. I'm going to shift this. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to preserve the name of each person so you don't see it. With that person with the chair that we just saw, I really like it. Feels very much like something that Jean-Claude and Christo were doing. And if you look at their work on wrapping cars and stuff, it is right out of the Jean-Claude and Christo playbook. Okay, so we're going to look at this one. All right, now this is really interesting to me because yeah, we have lost. We don't know what this object is. And there's some really fascinating things that are happening. But it's disappointing to me this photo is not. I think that this would be better if it was done in front of an infinity screen. And to be completely honest, I really like this texture here where the plastic bag is tied. And I think that texture, this would look 100% better with more of that texture. Like if they just got some more of the grocery bags from the store and maybe cut them in half and twisted them up and use that to tie around here, I think that would be so much better. Because right now, this feels like it's just put in a bag and that's it. It's not cocooned. Do you guys see what I'm seeing?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, right here, I really like that. I like how the plastic is wrapped around the wire or whatever it is. Right here, I really like that. I love this kind of texture. I love this kind of texture. The rest of it feels like it was just put in a bag. So that's a problematic, I think. Okay, this one I think is really interesting, but I do think it needs a little bit more work, and I would like to see a better photo of this. Because with the cocooning, the difference between the ready-made again and the cocooning is that the ready-made is recontextualize something, and the cocooning, you are making an object. And I think that this is really fascinating. But again, it's the same kind of thing that we just saw with the bag. It looks like it's something that's just wrapped with something simple. And I would love it if they had like green yarn or yellow yarn and wrapped it with several strands of that to give us that sense tying back to the cocoon. And I think that this photo would work so much better in front of a white infinity screen as opposed to on a chair, because the fact that this is a chair distracts from the cocoon. So, something for this person to think about. And what this is a little bit, the shape kind of reminds me of a butterfly cocoon, which suggests maybe if they did use green and yellow yarn, what about doing those in areas that kind of mimic where those different folds are in a butterfly's cocoon? I think that could really elevate this, and it would take this person about 15 more minutes to do that. Grab yellow and green yarn, do a little bit here, a little bit here with the green, do a little bit here with the yellow, a little bit there with the yellow, but make it feel intentional. And it wouldn't take that much time. So I think, so these are all looking to me pretty good, but they're just right on the edge. Okay, I'm setting this up so we can look at it.
I'm going to be really sad when this class is over. I really like it.
All right. I want you to look at this and tell me what's different. Yeah, they did just use kind of a bag type thing, but what is different about this than the other two we just saw? And I hope it's obvious. There's two principal things that are different.
It just doesn't seem like an object that's wrapped. It just kind of looks like a bunch of wadded up trash, I guess.
Okay, and this is what's different. I really like this because it is a cocooned object, and they did something to make it look like it's its own thing.
Okay.
And that is one reason why I like it. Now, I don't see anything tying it together. What I would say on this one, and the other thing that it's a big difference that I really make this stand out is that it's photographed on an infinity screen background. And I think that so the presentation is better. I think to make this fit the assignment better, I would say get rid of this for a second. Use light and dark string to kind of tie this in a little bit so that this feels more like a cocoon. Because Kelsey, that's a really good observation. It does feel like this is just kind of loosely wrapped. I would say either tighten up the wrapping a bit, do something like that so it feels more cocoon-like. And then after doing that, reapply this. And I think that could be really interesting. Or even use string to hold this in place. That would make it absolutely fantastic. This is
Yeah.
one of those things that's right on the edge. And I think the photography elevates it so much. Okay, and that's all that I wanted to look at tonight. Oh, and we went over. I'm so sorry. But these things that I'm looking at, I hope you guys recognize that they're just right at the edge. And it's all work that is really good, but just needs a little bit of an oomph to get it right to that A level. So, does this make sense? Kelsey and Anna, do you guys both see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's fine that we went over. We all needed to know all these things, so I'm sure we all appreciate it.
Well, good. I'm glad you're not upset. How about you, Anna? Does that make sense what I was talking about?
Yes. And I'm glad you went over to explain everything.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I appreciate that because what I love to see is that you guys are exploring this, and I don't want anybody to get upset because I think if you just tweak it a little bit, it'll be right there. And in
Well,
most of these cases, the tweak is going to take you 20 minutes.
if you look at this the way one should look at it, you're mentoring us and helping us to understand and become better, greater artists. So like your input is influential and means a lot. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm over the next day or two, I'm going to try to get all these graded. Again, don't get upset about the numbers. Look at what I'm saying, and then if it needs another 15 or 20 minutes of tweaking, take the 15 or 20 minutes. Take the half an hour, and it
yeah.
will elevate you up into that area. And just remember that ready-made is recontextualization. Cocooning is making a new object. So, but I really appreciate you guys staying. I'm sorry again. I apologize we went over, but I really appreciate you guys' attitude and for your input, your comments. All of that has been great. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing your time with me today.
Yeah. You're awesome. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
All right, we'll see you
Yeah.
guys next week. You guys be safe over the
See
weekend.
ya.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
We'll see you.